On this episode of China Uncensored, Thanksgiving is coming to China, and just like the American one, it hides a tale of mass carnage. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Local officials in Wenchuan County in the Sichuan province of China have created a new holiday. It's called Thanksgiving Day. Is it a day where people remember a bountiful feast between Communist Party officials and the Tibetans they saved from the clutches of the evil Dalai Lama, thanks to the brilliant guidance of the great helmsman Mao Zedong? Not quite. Actually, Wenchuan officials created the new Thanksgiving Day to commemorate the massive earthquake that hit Sichuan province in 2008. Wenchuan was the hardest hit area. And if it seems weird to give thanks on the date of a huge natural disaster, welcome to life under the Chinese Communist Party. May 12th was the 10-year anniversary of the 7.9 magnitude quake, which killed 70,000 people, according to official numbers from the Chinese Communist Party. Others put that number at closer to 300,000. But the most heartbreaking and controversial part of this disaster was that thousands of children died when their schools collapsed because of cheap construction. It turns out local officials embezzled money meant for construction materials, particularly for public schools. There used to be a school under these rocks. According to locals, the Chinese officials who were responsible for that have not been held accountable. In fact, they went on to embezzle reimbursement funds too. And parents and the local people who reported on the officials or who wanted to appeal are still under surveillance. So, what about this terrible tragedy makes it Thanksgiving Day? Enter the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda department. State-run Xinhua News writes about these new, beautiful, tidy buildings, and about the local people who expressed how thankful they were for the gushing springs of generosity that came from real donations from Chinese people around the country, but more importantly, they expressed thanks for all the hard work and dedication of Chinese Communist Party officials. Not the ones who embezzled all the money. We don't talk about them. And the people who lost their only child because of corrupt officials and are still trying to get justice from the government, they're under house arrest. At the time, the earthquake was a hugely sensitive issue, so it should come as no surprise that the Wenchuan officials' decision to call the 10th anniversary of this disaster Thanksgiving Day was not well received by everyone in China. That online post has since been deleted. Censors have been scrubbing the internet in the lead up to the sensitive anniversary. It's so sensitive that AFP journalists were even harassed by plainclothes police for trying to write a feel-good piece about a famous pig that survived the earthquake. Maybe because it could make people question why a pig survived but not thousands of school kids. Over the years, the Communist Party has been a little nervous about any artistic commemoration of the earthquake. Artist Ai Weiwei created this 3.5-hour-long recording of people reading 5,000 names of dead children. He was also detained for months and beaten up by police for trying to find out all the names of the children who died. And Chinese writer Tan Zuo-ren spent 5 years in prison after trying to investigate the corruption that led to the collapsed schools. But you know what? There are some artists that really get it. Artists that have earned enthusiastic support from the state. A month after the earthquake, one Chinese literary figure wrote a poem called A Tearful Request for the Earthquake Survivors. In it, he implored parents to stop their protests. He suggested the parents were being used by those with ulterior motives and by anti-Chinese forces. It's not very thankful of the parents to protest, is it? But the Sichuan earthquake is not unique. This is usually how the party responds to what it calls sudden incidents. Sudden incidents are a broad group that include accidents, natural disasters, and protests. That's why, according to Professor of History at Simon Fraser University, Jeremy Brown, instead of being transparent or treating accident victims compassionately, the impulse is to cover it up and target them for surveillance and crackdowns. Because that's what you do to a protest, right? Officials are basically incentivized to cover things up. That's why, anytime there is a sudden event, the party follows the same protocol: suppress critical voices and talk about how good the government did. Remember the mysterious Tianjin Explosions in 2015? Sure, the firefighters were woefully unprepared to deal with it, but don't pay attention to that. Focus instead on state-run newspaper articles about Chinese leaders urging an all-out effort to save people. And in 2012, Beijing suffered major flooding after unusually severe rains. But state-run CCTV didn't cover much about how the newly built drainage systems were so bad that 37 people died from the flooding. No, they ran this footage of dedicated rescue workers keeping everyone safe. Plus, this friendly reminder to locals.
另外下了死命令，在城市里头坚决不能死人，这也是一个跟自己乌纱帽连在一起的决定。
And I would feel awful if my death inconvenienced my beloved local officials. Or here's an oldie, but a goodie. And it involves our old friend Zhou Kong, the purged top party official, Jiang Zemin lackey, and live-action thwomp. In 1994, he was an official in the state-run oil company China National Petroleum. His company ran an oil town in Xinjiang called Karamai. A short circuit sparked a fire in the Karamai Friendship Theater, where about 300 school children were being visited by high-ranking local officials. Don't worry, they all made it out alive. The officials, not the children, they all died. According to survivors, a woman who had either helped organize the performance or was a government official immediately stood up and told everybody to be quiet, sit still, and let the leaders go first. Unfortunately, by the time the leaders had finished exiting, the fire had spread out beyond control. Of course, footage shows the quick response of rescue teams well after the fire. Zhou Kong took charge in the aftermath by not giving in to the demands of the parents, who then became targeted as troublemakers and came under surveillance themselves. And then he made a touching speech where he said, "I believe that all of the little boys and little girls in their graves would hope for Karamai to be stable. Be steadfast in opposing whatever words and deeds are not conducive to stability." Zhou Kong, by the way, was the person in charge of the Chinese Communist Party's security apparatus during the Sichuan earthquake. I guess he really led by example. I mean, frankly, every day should be Thanksgiving Day, because every day is a day to remember how the Chinese Communist Party saved China. You see, before the Communist Party took over in 1949, accidents were common in China, presumably because the evil capitalist system exploited people. But accidents seemed to totally stop under communism. As Professor Jeremy Brown discovered, if you read State-Run People's Daily, there were no accidents in China between about 1956 and the 1980s. It just stopped. There were a few mentions of accidents in capitalist countries as proof that capitalist countries exploited their workers and didn't care about safety, but there were actually no accidents in China openly reported for the rest of the Mao period. And that's why May 12th will not be known as the day thousands of school children died because of government corruption, but as Thanksgiving Day, a day to give thanks to the Communist Party. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time. Don't go anywhere, because I'm answering questions from fans of the show. This one comes from Hadrian Battle Fury. Is there anything I can do to help the channel? Absolutely. Here's what you can do. Share the show with your friends and family. The more views and fans China Uncensored has, the stronger it is. And if you can, consider financially supporting China Uncensored on Patreon. It's a website that lets you contribute $1 or more per episode. And as a perk, you get to submit questions to me that I'll answer at the end of each episode, along with some other cool stuff. So click this orange button to go to our Patreon website. And Mr. Battle Fury, since you're already supporting me on Patreon, also make sure you share the episodes, especially the one where you get name dropped.